What's up, everybody? Today we are talking about my loves and my hates with my Kia Stinger GT2. I've had it for about 3 months now. I've taken it on a trip that was 6.5 hours each way. I've driven around town a bunch. I've driven it up and down the Blue Ridge Parkway like I'm on now. And so I'd say I'm pretty familiar with this car. Most of everything is somewhat nitpicky, especially on the negative side, but even some of the loves that I have are a little small, little nitpicky, but we do have one major one. Just so we can end on a good note, we're going to start off with the hate. So my number one hate, and this one's not too important, is there's some creaks in the plastics or whatever on the interior of this car. It's only when the car has been sitting out and gotten really hot inside, and then I drive it until the interior cools down and the materials cool down all the way. There's some creaks and stuff. Now that I sold the Pajero Evo, this is in the garage every day, so I don't notice it, and even then, they went away shortly after driving. The next hate I have is the fuel efficiency or lack thereof. In my Charger, I got better overall gas mileage, especially on the highway, because it had the MDS system where it shut down 4 cylinders, and when you're just cruising, it will drive with 4 cylinders. In this twin turbo V6, it doesn't do that, and it's like, all right, that's not a big deal. But my Pajero got about the same or better gas mileage, and that was a boxy, somewhat heavy, 4-wheel drive rally SUV from 1997, and this is a car from 2023 when brands have focused on fuel efficiency. So if you're interested in a Stinger GT, one thing that is something that you have to think about is fuel efficiency, especially because this can take mid-grade, but I prefer to premium in all of my enthusiast cars. And so it does get worse gas mileage, especially on the highway, than a Scat Pack Charger. And so that might be an issue, especially if you're looking at different performance sedans. So the next one, and these aren't in any particular order for the loves or the hates, they're just the order I thought of them. And this one's really nitpicky, but the badges on the outside are sharp. And what I mean by that is I wash this car sometimes more than once in a week, but often weekly. And if there is any strings or anything hanging off of your microfibers, they get caught on the edges of the badges and then they get pulled, and it's like slowly starting to degrade my microfiber drying towels. And if you buy nice detailing stuff, you know that they're not really cheap. You know, the big ones are like $30+. So that can be a bit of an issue. Obviously, that's something to be careful, or cut the strings or the frays on your microfiber towels. But still a small nitpicky thing that I do hate, especially because I wash this car so much. The next hate is something that's also very minor, but there's a delay on both ends of using Apple CarPlay in this car. When I got in the Charger, plugged in my phone, it almost instantly brought up CarPlay. Sometimes it's pretty quick. Sometimes it takes, no joke, a minute plus to recognize it's plugged in, read it, and then in the Charger, when you plugged in my iPhone, it just went and opened CarPlay automatically. Here, I still have to go into the infotainment system and hit open and hit the CarPlay app to open CarPlay. So it takes a while to recognize it's even plugged in, and then I have to go hit it, which is minor, not that big a deal, doesn't ruin driving the car. But then on the other end, when you turn off the car, since the car doesn't like go into accessory mode for like 30 seconds and then auto turn off like the Charger did and like a lot of other cars do, it just goes all the way to off mode, but it still plays your music on your phone, but you don't hear it because it's plugged in. It's still recognizing Apple CarPlay. So then on the reverse end, it's like playing music and stuff in the background, and you know, that's another small nitpicky thing. Most people aren't as particular about the way they listen to music as I am, because I'm a little bit ridiculous, but that's just an annoyance that it doesn't like stop as soon as the car turns off. So the next hate isn't necessarily a bad one for the general population, but if you consider yourself a safe driver, the car, for 2 different safety features I've run into this, will slam on your brakes. One is if there is like a pedestrian crossing warning, but it's done that for me and slammed on my brakes as a car's passing me in the neighborhood and I'm just slowly backing out of my driveway, or in a parking lot when they're passing, I'm not gonna hit it, I see it. So instead of warning you and then, you know, giving you a second and then hitting the brakes, it just slams on the brakes as soon as there's a cross traffic warning, which is not bad because a lot of people don't pay attention. And sometimes, you know, everybody gets distracted. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I tend to be a very careful driver because I'm very afraid of even just inconveniencing people minorly throughout my day, let alone hitting them with my car or hitting someone else's car. Plus, I don't want to damage my car. And then the other one was I was in the grocery store parking lot just driving over to the gas pumps, and my door was closed but not latched all the way, which I didn't think was a big deal because I was driving 200 feet across the parking lot slowly, and it kept warning me and warning me and warning me, and finally just slammed on my brakes which I don't like my car automatically just slamming on my brakes for me. So I didn't like that. So I don't like that some of the safety features will just slam your brakes instead of easy unit braking or braking. It's like an immediate 100% brake, and I hate that. So this one's another minor one. It's not very common of a situation, but the center trim around the gear selector and the cup holders is this like brushed aluminum, and when the sun is coming through the car, if you don't have sunglasses, it's like legitimately blinding to the point where it can be dangerous and it makes it hard to drive. I hate it. I thought about getting some like clear, like matte vinyl and trying to wrap it over it, or finding some other solution to wrap it. I haven't, because I just don't want to. But if you, like, I ever forget my sunglasses, I accidentally bring them in the house, whatever. Sometimes it's hard because it can be so blinding in the middle. Another nitpicky thing, another thing that doesn't really ruin the driving experience in kind of a niche situation, but it's just something that is a pain. So my seventh and final hate, and this one's kind of a bigger one, is the visibility can be so. You can see enough, and Kia and Hyundai, they have the really nice blind spot cameras, but the C-pillar in this car is pretty thick. It is a pretty thick C-pillar, and that's partly because of the lift back, which I really like the overall look of this car. In fact, I love it, and the lift back is nice and is convenient and provides extra cargo space, and that's all really good. But it creates this really thick C-pillar, and then the lift back rear window is also pretty skinny. The Charger had a normal size C-pillar and a huge rear window, and so at least coming from that, the visibility is not as good. And even comparing to my fiance's Civic, less cargo space, but skinnier C-pillar, better rear window. The visibility's fine. The A-pillars are pretty normal. All the rest of that, but like the rear visibility is so, especially when doing head checks, which I still do because I don't like relying on those cameras. But that's it for my hates, mostly nitpicky, and they certainly don't outweigh the loves, especially a couple of the loves that I have. So at number one, my biggest love of this car is the driving experience. Now, it can be somewhat of a big car, but I came from an even bigger car in the Charger, and I like having decent cargo space. I like having good enough rear passenger room, comfortable front seat room, and I have all of that in this car. That's why I like the bigger sedans. I don't want to go as big as 7 Series from BMW, but I like the bigger sedans, although the Charger was like 7 Series size, and it's one of the reasons I moved on to the Stinger. But it has good size, but the size is pretty masked in the good chassis dynamics, the good suspension, especially when you put it into sport mode. All of that actually works out really well to give good handling. And between the all-wheel drive and the twin-turbo V6, it's quick. It's as quick as my Charger. It's quick getting on the highway. It's quick when you have to pass people. It's quick in spirited driving. So I think it handles really well for its size. It drives pretty quick. So overall, I think the driving experience is really good. And when you're just in comfort modes, it's a very comfortable ride. The sound deadening is good enough. So overall, I think it's a very enjoyable driving experience, which is obviously the biggest factor when an enthusiast gets a car, is the driving experience and how they feel about it. And I love the driving experience in my Stinger. So moving on to my second love, this one's a lot more minor, but just the way the auto climate interacts with the auto start stop. Everyone's like biggest complaint in modern cars that's common is the auto start stop, which I don't mind like most people do. But one of people's biggest complaints with the auto start stop is how it stops their climate control because the car turns off. But in the Stinger, the auto climate, if it senses it's too hot in the car, it won't engage the auto start stop to keep you at least close to the auto climate zone. It will let you get a little bit warmer than where you have the temperature set, but once it gets too hot, the car starts again. Or if it's still too warm in the car, like you just started driving after parking it outside in the summer, it won't turn on until the car is cool enough that it feels like it can stop the car with the auto start stop. And that's just a small thing that I love because it helps negate one of people's biggest complaints with auto start stop. So moving on to the next thing I love, and this is more of it's just a nice thing about the car versus I'm like in love with this, and that is the amount of compliments and conversation I get. I get more compliments than I did in the Charger. Even when I just bought the Charger and they were still relatively new and I got a lot of compliments on it, I get even more here, and I get way more conversation than I did in the Pajero. I got almost none. I expected to get some conversation in the Pajero, just being a weird right-hand drive, interesting looking SUV that we didn't get in the States. I got like almost no conversation except for right when I bought it. Somebody, when I was about to drive it home from the importer I got it from, asked me about what it was. But other than that, other than at Cars and Coffees and stuff, I got no conversation. The Stinger, pretty much every week, I get somebody asking me about it, what it is, what's significant about it. They've never seen it, never heard of it, didn't know Kia made a cool car, all of that. And so if you like a lot of compliments and you like talking about your car a lot, which sometimes I do if I'm not in a hurry, sometimes I don't, but I love talking cars, so at the end of the day, it's still a positive, and it's something that this car brings to the table. So my fourth love of this car is another very small one that's not very important, but it's the way the parking brake works in this car. Now, I'm somebody who prefers a manual parking brake, especially just a hand lever and not a foot brake, but if I'm gonna have electric parking brake, I want it to be like the Stingers, where if I have the parking brake on and I get in the car to drive, and I just put it in drive or reverse, it just turns off the parking brake. I don't have to turn it off. It just turns off on its own, recognizing that I'm ready to drive. It's just nice that the parking brake works with you and not against you like so many electric parking brakes can. And it's one thing when it's a mechanical parking brake, but when it's an electric parking brake or electronic, it should work with you. We have computers all over the cars. It should be able to sense the stuff that the Stinger does and do that stuff for you. So moving on to my next love, and this is something that people that don't like the Stinger might not like about it, but the overall size. It is not a small car. It's not a small sedan, but I don't want a very small sedan. I want to be able to use my back seats even if I don't use them very often. They need to be usable in my mind, and it provides good cargo space with the lift back. It's comfortable to ride in the car. It's got good cargo space, so it's a good family car, good road trip car, a good car for when you have guests in town and you're driving around, you got to pick somebody up from the airport, whatever. I love the size. It is not nearly as big as my Charger. I can touch the passenger door panel, which I couldn't in the Charger. That was too big for a lot of the Asheville roads, but the Stinger is good enough size to provide all the utility I want in a sedan while not being quite as massive as the Charger was and as much of a pain on the local Asheville roads and some of the mountain roads when I'm going to hikes and stuff like I am now. So my sixth and final love, and this might just be coming from being in a base Scat Pack, but is the features in this car. The features are so loaded in the GT2 Stinger that I have heated rear seats, but I also have heated and cooled front seats, a heated steering wheel, 360 cameras, a lot of really luxury features in a car that wasn't really positioned at a luxury price. Now, they were expensive. They could get into the 50s brand new, but you have that. You have the blind spot cameras, which for whatever reason are still like only in Hyundais and Kias when they really should be in like everything. I have heated mirrors. I have the electronic tailgate, or lift back, which I have mixed feelings on. I kind of like just doing it manually. But there's pretty much every feature a normal person would ever want in this car, and it was not from a German luxury brand or Lexus or Acura or even Genesis, the Korean luxury brand. I call it Korean because Hyundai and Kia are both owned by the same parent company, and like the G70 is the same car but more luxuryified. But it just has all the luxury features that a normal person would ever want, and then some, like heated rear seats and heated steering wheel, something normal people don't really think about. And so I do love how loaded this car actually is, especially for how cheap you can get them compared to other cars from 2023 that would be similarly loaded in features. But those are my loves and my hates of the Stingers. In my opinion, the loves way outweigh the hates, and the hates were much more nitpicky than some of the less important loves. And I love this car. It's been a great little over 3 months so far. I would highly recommend them for people looking for a sports sedan and they don't want to spend German money. I would highly recommend this, or go up to the G70 if you want to spend just a little more money. But those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you like my content, and hit that bell if you want to be notified when my content is uploaded so you can see it right away. And thank you so much for watching. There's links in the description if you want to support me in some of my other content platforms. I do appreciate support anywhere. But thank you again so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.